It's time for
DodgerHeads. What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Medium Large Sports Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Anthony Witrado, here to break down, unfortunately, yet another Dodgers loss. The Dodgers fall 7-6 to the Cubs. In this one, it was a bullpen game from the start, and unfortunately, when you need a lot of things to go right in a bullpen game, a couple guys don't get their job done, then things fall apart for the Dodgers. So it's a second straight loss for the Dodgers in a game in which they held the lead in this one. Anthony, give me your immediate reaction to what we just saw.
It's annoying that when it seems like the bats finally come alive a little bit, they can't get any pitching, which is what these last couple games have been. But overall, I think you're right about the bullpen game. For a bullpen game to really be successful, you can't have really more than one guy falter, and they had a few guys that did not pitch well today.
Yeah.
And so when you have that, typically it's hard to win that game. The whole idea behind it is that everyone has to do their job for the time that they're in there. And we can say all of the stuff about, Barnes and Pages and Ohtani even, and, all of that stuff is yes, but they were in position to win. And if we want to talk about things we can control, like the base running error or the Pages throw, all of that stuff, you can also say, like, stop walking guys.
Yeah. It's walks, it's base running mistakes, and it's defensive mistakes. And those are all, major what ifs. But the reason they're what ifs is because those are things that you believe you can expect to limit. It's not crazy
Correct.
To say, hey, can we not get picked off first base in a big spot? Hey, can we not throw to third on a play where you have no chance and the guy ends up advancing to second and then scoring on a single because of the bad throw? Those are the types of things that should be expected to not happen on a baseball field. And you could say the same thing about a bullpen that ends up with 7 walks after Ben Kasperius comes out of the game. You out-hit the Cubs in this one 11-8 and still come out short because of all that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to get to some super chats, and then I've got 3 big questions that I want to ask you about this game before we get to a Blake Snell injury update, a Will Smith injury update, and some questions. 300 with the super chat. Boy, we are not playing not well at all. Fair. I don't think anybody would disagree. Dodgers 8-9 in their last 17. Ivan says, Ohtani has been horrendous outside of the walk-off. He has 0 clutch hits, looks god-awful at the plate. Crazy. I feel way more confident with Edman. Ohtani, Anthony, is 3 for his last 21 with 9 strikeouts over that stretch. Nobody is concerned big picture with Shohei Ohtani, but I think it's fair to say I would have liked to see more in that at-bat in the top of the 9th than some pretty uncompetitive swings.
Yeah, that was an ugly at-bat. That was sort of tailor-made kind of Shohei Ohtani moment. But yeah, I think you're right. I think the key word there is uncompetitive. They are un-Ohtani-like at-bats that we're seeing right now. He's gone through these kinds of slumps. We saw it last year, a few times or so. Nothing he can't break out of. But yeah, I think the difference here between some of those, even ones like earlier in this season that he's had, is like he was still barreling up balls and hitting the ball 106 miles an hour into someone's glove or something like that. Yeah. And these just feel like almost like he's got no chance in some cases.
Yeah. In that last at bat, I mean, he was swinging over breaking balls that it genuinely felt like he had no chance. 300 with another super chat says Dodgers look old and slow as well.
They've been old and slow.
What's that?
They've been old and slow.
Yeah, I don't. Old and slow don't jump off the page to me, off the screen to me when I watch this, but I'll take your word for it. Kevin says World Series hangover in effect. I mean,
I guess. I mean, they look at the record, though. It's still pretty good.
Yeah.
They have not played well lately. I get that, but like to hangover. They're not playing great right now.
Yeah. Daniel Barry says, shout out to Austin Barnes hitting better than Shohei. Did you like what you saw out of Austin Barnes tonight, Anthony?
Aside from getting picked off for absolutely no good God reason. Sure. Yeah, he's been fine.
We had the full Austin Barnes experience tonight. Defensively, just eating some pitches with guys stealing bags. He gets one guy at third because that guy's terrible at stealing bases. So it was we got the full experience tonight.
He couldn't even do that without incident.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and look, even getting the guy at third, if that's a decent slide, it looked like he beat the ball to third. He just slid straight over the bag and got a pretty good block, I guess, by Miguel Rojas.
The way that guy ran the bases, he should have been a Dodger right now.
Yeah, he attends the Andy Paje school of base running. LLM says this team stinks. The bullpen is horrible. The Cubs bullpen might be better than ours. I wish I was joking. This leads into a couple questions that I have. And so I've got 3 questions for tonight, Anthony, as a way to break down what we just saw. And so let me ask you this. The first question is the bullpen becoming a concern? This is a narrative that I've seen a lot of talk on social media about. Can the Dodgers bullpen be trusted? It came into the season being this thing that was going to be an unbelievable strength. You had Kirby Yates, you had Tanner Scott. Both of those guys blow saves in the past week. Obviously, today was a full-fledged bullpen game. They end up giving up 7 runs in just 8 innings with 7 walks and 8 hits allowed. So give me your take. Is the Dodgers bullpen a concern for you?
It's a concern in the way that they're being taxed in April in a way that I just think that we thought they wouldn't be.
Yeah.
And I think that's the cause for some of this stuff is that there have been so many days so far in April where a lot of the high leverage guys have been down because of usage, not necessarily injuries, but just strictly talking about usage and availability that way. That part's frustrating because we thought that we had the rotation that was going to be able to give them some cover, at least early in the season, right? To say like, yeah, we should, so many leverage arms, a pretty deep rotation, even with not everyone available there, that we did not think that it would be this thin, this soon in the bullpen. And so I think that's what we're dealing with more so than just straight up ineffectiveness, because the bullpen was the best in baseball for a little while. And you keep leaning on them, you keep leaning on them, you keep leaning on them. Short starts from the very start of the season to then guys, having to miss starts with injuries and yada, yada. And all of a sudden you get a bunch of guys that are kind of tired, 25 games in or whatever we're at, 30 games in. And so I'm concerned for them that way, not that everyone has lost it.
Yeah. I'm going to ask a trivia question. So I'll ask people to throw their answer in the chat because I'm curious. Last 8 games coming into this one, the Dodgers bullpen has thrown 29 2/3 innings. So again, 8 games prior to tonight, 29 2/3 innings. I want you to give me a guess at what you think the ERA was over that stretch. 8 games, 29 2/3. 8 games, 29 2/3 for the bullpen. But while I give people a chance to take a shot at that one, you mentioned the word taxed. Coming into this game, they had the most innings pitched as a bullpen of any team in Major League Baseball. And initially I thought, well, they started the season earlier, but actually they've played 24 games. Everybody in baseball is 22 to 25. So the Padres have played more games than the Dodgers coming into today. So they may have played more games than some, but the point is they had the most relief pitching innings pitched, Anthony, of any team in Major League Baseball, despite a starting staff that is going 6 men deep. Now, a bullpen game today, I get that, but when you're on a 6-man rotation, your bullpen should be getting a little bit of a break because the starters should be going a little bit longer. I know the guys they have aren't built for that, but I think that's the crazy thing. But here's the number that surprised me. Do you want to take a guess at this, Anthony? Last 8 games, just under 30 innings. What do you think the ERA was?
Is it in the 5s?
3.03.
Yeah, that's good.
That would be the sixth best bullpen ERA in Major League Baseball. And again, I think it's the Kirby Yates game and the Tanner Scott game. They make you feel like it is so much worse than it is. Now, if you want to prove the point against me, you could go back one game further. You get the 16-0 game in your sample size, and all of a sudden that ERA is probably 6 or 7. But coming into tonight, it was a 3.03 ERA over their last 8 games, which, to the point I'm trying to make, is probably better than most people would guess.
That was coming into tonight. If you take it back one more game and go into Tuesday night, I'm assuming it's under 3.
Yeah, right. And obviously, if you go to 16-0 and add in tonight's game, it's going to be ugly. But to my point in all this is 2 things. One, I think they've probably been better than it feels. I remember coming into the show that Greg and I did last Thursday, and I wanted to do a segment on how the bullpen had been struggling and was underwhelming. And then I looked at the numbers and I was like, it just isn't true. Like, they just had a bunch of guys that you remember the times they give up the runs and you forget about the other, again, they've pitched the most innings. So yes, they've given up a decent amount of runs, but it all evens out. But the second thing is, let's just remember, this group is not healthy yet. Jack Dreyer, as good as he has been so far this season, was not expected to be on the opening day roster. Noah Davis, Luis Garcia, both those guys are DFA candidates here pretty soon. Even Ben Kasperius, I think, was kind of a fringe, maybe only making the opening day roster because of some injuries to some other guys. So I think this group is going to get healthier. I'm not concerned long term, and I would argue that even in the short term, they've probably been better than it felt.
Yeah, I agree. This is a situation a little bit, I'm a little surprised by that, because you're right. The bad stands out more, and that's what resides at the front of our minds more so than, when you go out and do your job and Alex Vesia, you come in and you throw a scoreless inning and you face 4 batters and you're out of there. And we don't remember that because it's uneventful. You did what we expected you to do, essentially.
Yeah.
But, Kirby Yates, who has been good, you come in and you give up the walk-off home run, and, there's a big spotlight on it. So that's understandable. Yeah, I just think they need some better starting pitching.
Yeah.
And for some of those guys to get healthy, and I think this will start to right itself a little bit more for the bullpen.
Laura with the super chat. Remember when we had too many starters? Good times. Yep. Unfortunately, Gonsolin due back soon. Kershaw 2 rehab appearances. So at least there's, I guess, a couple guys worth of reinforcements that are due back soon. Landon Knack, I think, deserves to be in this conversation. As bad as he looked the first time, he just wasn't eligible to come back because of you have to stay down for a certain number of days after you get optioned down to the minor leagues. But to Laura's point, I did not, Anthony, have on my bingo card on April 23rd the Dodgers already having to go bullpen game.
I would have taken that bet just because it's the Dodgers and this is how they operate. So that, but not out of like this kind of necessity, I think is kind of what you're saying. And that I would agree with. I had made a comment, I think it was either on a show, maybe it was a tweet, about how there is no such thing as a starting pitching surplus.
Yeah.
And I had people all over me. And I've said it before in like previous things that I've written or whatever. And you get the same kind of responses. And I had people telling me like, first week of the season or so that like they should start looking at trades to deal from that starting pitching group. And I'm like, no, you don't do that. You don't do that. I did not expect this to be the case this soon, but this is why. This is why there's no such thing as a surplus.
Jasper, I think with a little bit of reasonableness here, he says, as much as Ohtani's slump is annoying, we just gave up 18 runs in 48 hours. Look, the offense, everyone was crushing the offense 3 days ago, Anthony. Last time you and I were on the show, it was, look how much of a mess the Dodgers offense has been. They produced the last 2 games, and yet then the pitching lets them down. And so the unfortunate losses continue to pile up even as the offense improves. Daniel Barry says, just trade for PCA at this point. What was it? He has 4 of his 5 home runs have come against the Dodgers or something this season. They could use a center fielder. So who knows? Not that I think the Cubs are interested in trading him.
That ball he hit out was not a bad pitch.
Yeah.
And he goes and he golfs it out.
I love the like home runs in how many park numbers. And that was a home run in only Wrigley Field. That's a home run in no other stadium in all of Major League Baseball. With that launch angle, and and that exit velocity. It literally is not a home run anywhere. So actually both of his home runs were oh no, sorry, the other one's a fly out. Got it. Yeah. He hit a fly out that would have been out a home run in more parks than the actual home run that he hit. So there you go. Jonathan says injury prone pitchers getting injured. Andrew Friedman is shocked. So only April, and we're already picking up pitchers that couldn't make a 4-18 team. We had another one here. Jedi Engineer says, pick your preference, Noah Davis or Brent Honeywell. Honeywell's a better pitcher at this point. Noah Davis can be optioned. I mean, that's the only reason he's here and Honeywell isn't. I'm surprised Honeywell hasn't gotten picked up somewhere. But Noah Davis is not long for the Los Angeles Dodgers. That feels certain, huh, Anthony?
Yeah, absolutely. He's here because there are spots in the bullpen that need to be filled.
Yep. LLM says Barnes and Rojas are hurting this team. Sucks that the front office would rather have them on the roster because they want to do right by them instead of us, the fans. There's a part of me, Anthony, that entirely agrees with every single word in this entire tweet. Like, if the Dodgers' sole goal was to win as many Major League Baseball games as possible, Rojas and Barnes should not be anywhere near this Major League roster. I would guess that Barnes is at least the fourth best catching option that they have in the organization, if I'm counting Dalton Rushing as a catcher. And if we're taking total package between offense, defense, all of it. Miguel Rojas used to be a defensive sub. He's not a defensive sub, and he still can't hit. So those things are all true. I completely agree with. The counter to myself is, would you rather have Ha-Seong Kim or Dalton Rushing sitting on a major league bench 5 days out of 7 just so that you can have a better backup catcher and so that you can have a better, backup infielder? The answer is no. That's why we are where we are. But these two guys stink.
Yeah, no, they're bad. I agree. And they have Barnes there for a reason. While he may not be, he can't hit. He's not like an elite framer or anything like that. He doesn't have a cannon for an arm or anything. They like the way he's not just clubhouse guy for them. They like the way he handles pitching staffs. It's why he's gotten the Sasaki assignments recently. You can do with what you will. You may not like that response, but it's how they see it. I'm telling you how they see it. They find value in him in that way. The Rojas stuff is beyond me because I don't think he's much of a clubhouse guy. Not that he's hurt this clubhouse. I'm not saying that, but I don't think he's like the leader of that clubhouse. And also, he can't hit still, and the glove has taken a hit. Yeah. And so keeping him around and getting as much playing time as he has, that's starting to get frustrating. I'm with you there.
Yeah. And look, we've beat to death the idea of how much does having a backup catcher and the last guy on your roster, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, we don't need to do that. Yeah.
Like, I'm ready. If we were to rank the worst players on the Dodgers, Anthony, this will be a fun exercise. Rank these 3 guys in who you would like to see at the plate the most. Like, you would like to see play at most. The full package. Chris Taylor, Miguel Rojas, and Austin Barnes. Forget like positional value, but just like one of these guys has to be in the lineup. And forget whose spot they're taking. Whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear you.
Who do you like the most right now out of Taylor, Rojas, and Barnes?
Taylor.
So do I. He doesn't. Why doesn't he play?
That's an easy answer for me right now.
Why isn't he playing at third?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I would rather.
It doesn't matter, but I just blows my mind. I think Rojas stinks. He brings nothing to the table.
No, and at least Taylor is capable of running into one with the barrel now and then.
People are gonna love this. But I mean, yeah. Rojas has a 184 on base and a 160 slug. Barnes has a 174 on base and a 261 slug. Barnes is just killing it. Big 2 for 4 day. Double jacked up the slugging percentage for our guy Austin Barnes. So shout out to Laura and Matt and all the Austin Barnes truthers that never gave up. Chris Taylor hitting 250, by the way, this season. So take that. Forget the fact that he only has 12 at bats. Okay, he's hitting 250. People, 250.
It is interesting though, like that. We don't have to go deep down this road, but it is interesting though that some of these other guys, Kike included, and Rojas are getting so much playing time at different positions, and Taylor's not getting any.
Yeah,
he can't be much worse than Barnes. at least in like a corner outfield spot or at third base.
Yeah, and again, Taylor Barnes is a harder one. Like Taylor could play the position that Rojas is playing.
Right.
Defensively, that's a like for like. So that's the part that blows me. And I think there's a decent chance Taylor's a better defender than Miguel Rojas
at this point.
Yeah,
maybe not at like shortstop, but I think in other positions, he's probably just as good.
Hulk Smash. Can we agree Ohtani isn't fully healthy yet? His swing is not the same. The repaired shoulder isn't right. It's hard for me to get here, Anthony, only because he started off the season so well. Yeah. So we weren't having these conversations at the beginning of the year, and his shoulder wouldn't get better and then get worse. But if it's not the injury, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to explain the swings that we've seen over the last few days.
Yeah, I mean, he's going through it. It's again, these things are they have a magnifying glass on them because it's April and the season is still brand new on us. He went through 3 or 4 of these stretches last season.
Yeah,
he did. And there's a lot of recency bias in some of this stuff. And there were people complaining about him. They were complaining about Shohei, who went 50-50 and won the MVP last year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's going to get right. He's going through it right now. I don't, aside from, unless there's an injury that they're hiding from us, I see no reason why he won't break himself out of this at some point any day.
Yeah. Randy with the huge super chat. Randy, we appreciate you. He says, what are you most concerned with? Is it production at third base or is it center field play? So is it kind of the Muncy and others combination at third? Is it Pages in center? Depth of the bench, I think I've some people would throw into this category. Is it the bullpen? Is it the back end of the starting rotation? What would you say is most concerning to you right now, Anthony?
I would say center field.
Yeah.
Because I think long term, that's going to have more of an impact than, maybe Muncy not playing well at third or Kike splitting time there and not playing well or whatever. Even the bench. I think the center field not being good defensively right now unless Edman's out there, and also not being productive unless Edman is out there. That's a bigger problem, I think, long term, and one that can have more of an impact on how good this team can be.
And I would agree with you if I can broaden this to the center field slash second base conversation, because as we said at the beginning, the Dodgers had a group of like 5 dudes, and it's like, okay, Outman, Ha-Seong Kim, Andy Pages, Kike Hernandez, Chris Taylor. Can one of you guys play well enough at some point to just lock down a spot? Like, can 1.5 of you play well that one guy locks down the spot, and maybe there's a little bit of a platoon, and they're basically over. Ha-Seong Kim, to be determined. He's down at AAA. They don't think he's ready yet. But like Pages, he hits the home run tonight. I joked his plus minus was 0 because he cost them a run with the stupid throw, and then he hits a dinger, his 4th of the year. The OPS isn't atrocious, even though the batting average is, because he actually has been walking and he does have 4 home runs. But that to me is the biggest concern, because it doesn't just seem to me, Anthony, like there's an obvious answer staring us in the face. I think you could try, and I would probably be in this camp of making the case that Muncy's going to figure this out at some point. Maybe he becomes average, but there's a greater likelihood of Max Muncy becoming an average contributor, offense, defense, all things included, than any of the guys I just mentioned in that other group. And so that's why I would say that's my biggest concern.
Yeah, I think so. And I would, of all of the options that we're talking about, it was kind of what you just said a little bit. I would put my money on Muncy figuring this out.
Yeah.
Before any of those other guys are really productive major league players.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. It's funny to me that Pages, every time he feels like this is it, we've come to the end, he's going to be toast, he just hits a home run and buys himself another like 4 or 5 days on the job. Because I just wonder, with these defensive mistakes in games like this where the margins are so slim, and aside from the home run, he's over. It's just like, at some point, do they just look in the minor leagues and say, like, okay, Outman can at least play defense, and like the offense isn't going to be, I just wonder. He keeps hitting home runs, he's going to keep saving himself the job. So Randy, we appreciate the super chat. Thank you for that. We got another big one here from Fritz, $10. He says Lux versus LA, July 7. Oh, versus LA 7 through 9. Sorry, trying to transcribe here on the fly. Lux is hitting 316 with a 419 on base percentage, maybe mostly hitting in the 4 or 5 spot for the Reds. He'd probably be the 7-9 part of the order. Should we have gotten rid of him?
Oh boy. I've been wondering how long before like this gets louder and louder, because I've seen it sprinkled in here or there. Fritz is not the first one. Thank you, Fritz, for the super chat. I'm going to take this one first, if you don't mind, Jeff.
It's all yours.
Jeff and I were we were hand in hand going down with the ship on Gavin Lux last year.
The water was up. The water was up to our chin, but we were
barely breathe. We were like this. Everyone was telling us we were stupid for wanting to hang on to this guy and thinking that he had the capability of turning it around, and then he did. And then he had an okay postseason. Like, he didn't kill you. He was fine. Get rid of him. Now everyone wants him back. They wanted him DFA'd last year. Game-tying
sack fly in Game 5 of the World Series.
For those who forgot,
by the way. Move the runner over to third with a deep fly to center field so that Mookie could take the lead. I mean, just some people remember these things. Some people.
Yeah. Hey, but it's a little ironic now that we can make this kind of comparison, because he is playing well in Cincinnati, which, by the way, a bunch of those Central stadiums are hitter havens. Yeah. I covered National League Central baseball for a lot of years. The ball flies, especially in Cincinnati. Not to say that's the only reason why his numbers look like they do, but it was this time last year that people were asking why Gavin Lux was on the team.
Yeah. I said that I was glad he was gone from the perspective of the toxicity of the narrative around Gavin Lux had reached a point where it was going to be better for everybody if he moved on. I also came on here and said that I thought Gavin Lux would be far more. I believe the conversation was specific to Haesung Kim. I don't remember who I was on the show with, but it was a conversation about Kim. And I said, I would bet a large amount of money that Gavin Lux's numbers this year would be better than Haesung Kim's would be at the major league level. I'm not going to say I expected this from Gavin Lux. I think he's outperforming some of the expected numbers, yada, yada, yada. But I think Gavin Lux is better than all of the options they have. Like, I think he's a slightly above average offensive player is where he's going to settle into for his career. And he was playing a solid second base, which is more than you could say for the guys that they have. So the Dodgers would love to have this trade back. I'm sure of it, the way that things have played out. They placed a bet that, again, one of the 5 guys I mentioned would figure it out. So far, none of them have. We obviously have no clue what the draft pick and Sirota will turn into and if those guys become anything. But Lux is off to a good start, and I'm happy for him as long as it doesn't take away from the Dodgers. Freedom with the super chat, another big one. Getting swept in both games in Chicago and using the bullpen today and not holding the lead is not a team going deep in October. Now pitchers are going down quickly, already a repeat of 2024 injuries. Not a good look. I agree with you, Freedom, getting swept, losing the season series to Chicago. The bullpen game today was not great. Here's the good news. If this is a repeat of the 2024 injuries, that season ended well. So if we can repeat anything involving 2024 and we just get to repeat everything, then I'm in for it.
Yeah. Hey, if this is what we're dealing with and it's going to be the same as 2024, I'm all in on it.
Yeah. We keep saying this. And so, Freedom, we appreciate the super chat. The team we are watching today is not going to be the team that is competing for the World Series at the end of this year. In some ways, there are guys that are healthy now that could get injured. That's reality. But the Dodgers are doing everything they can. When we talk about Blake Snell here in a little bit, the Dodgers are doing everything they can with an eye towards September, October, November. And as long as guys are dialed, as long as certain guys are healthy by then what they did on April 23rd, we're going to look back on and say it didn't really matter. So we appreciate the super chat, Freedom. But I think we can, where they are today is not the most important thing.
Yeah. And I think that we're about halfway to where we can start to really look at things as they stabilize.
Yeah.
Especially on the hitting side, to say like, okay, this is kind of who they might be for the season. So there's still some time left. There's still a month or so before we can, make a judgment that feels more realistic.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. David says, I'm too pissed to talk about the game tonight. I'm going to go watch basketball, buy something good to eat. Hey, that's a good way to wash this one out of your mouth, David, is go put some good food, head to the lamplighter and get some food. Some more super chats here. Jonathan, remember the pen isn't 100% yet. That's from Jeff in 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Touche, Jonathan. Touche. Hey, they won the World Series in 2 of those years, so we'll take it. Timmy wants to know, how much longer till we see Kim? Do you think Kim is up before the All-Star break, Anthony?
I'll say this. I think a couple of weeks ago, my answer would have been no. But I think if he's able to keep his head above water offensively in OKC, and by that, I mean, being productive. He doesn't have to be on fire the whole time, but he's somewhat productive there. And what the people who are in front of him in the big leagues are doing what they're doing now, I think we do see him before the All-Star break.
Okay. I'm going to go no, just because it's kind of like playing. If you gave me Kim or the field for who is the first guy called up, I would just take my chances that it maybe is Alex Freeland, or that it's maybe James Outman, or I don't know, somebody else. I would just take my chances that it's maybe somebody else. Based on how they've talked about him, it feels like they're trying to slow expectations. Now, maybe that's just to get the narrative out of the mouths of people that are talking, but it's a good question, Timmy. Fritz says Pages struggles fielding, Muncy struggles hitting, Conforto is being Conforto. Laura had a question about Conforto too. Talk about Conforto's expectations for 2025. I was really high on Conforto coming into the season. I thought, based on how he had played last year, being further removed from some injuries, that this year we would see the best version of Michael Conforto. We have not seen it so far. You could look at sort of the normal counting stats. His batting average is down 40 points, although his on-base percentage is up 40 points. His slugging percentage is down over 100 points. He has just 2 home runs in 87 plate appearances so far. What have you seen? I mean, tonight he was, I think, 1 for 3 with a walk. So tonight he wasn't terrible. Obviously had the weird defensive play between him and Rojas that led to a double for Michael Busch. But give me your thoughts on Michael Conforto so far.
I've been pretty indifferent on him to this point. He's hitting right around league average or so. In terms of expectations, I did expect him to be a little above that 100 mark. So whether you're looking at weighted runs created, OPS plus, those kinds of things, I expected him to be a bit better than league average. He was better than league average last year with the Giants in that ballpark.
Yeah.
And so I thought that, with the Dodgers development staff and getting out of San Francisco, he might be able to find something here. He still can, don't get me wrong. We're not there yet that we need to be out on this guy. But yeah, it's been unimpressive, but it hasn't been terrible, especially when you consider some of the other guys in the lineup around him. Yeah.
There were some guys last year, right, where guys kind of skated under the radar because Gavin Lux was so bad in the first half that all anybody could see was that.
And a lightning rod too. When there's another guy who's a lightning rod in the lineup,
yeah,
your slip of production kind of gets masked over a little bit.
And this year it's Pages, right? Because of the defense and because of everything. When I was on Blue Review with Greg Bergman on Friday morning, there were 2 numbers that I highlighted for Conforto that are things to keep an eye on. The number, when you go look at his Savant page and some of the kind of underlying metrics, the trends that you see from him, the biggest number that jumps out to me when I just do a cursory look is one of the cool things you can look at is sort of the batted ball profile, meaning what does he do when he's pulling the ball? Is he pulling the ball in the air? Is he pulling the ball on the ground? Is he hitting it opposite field on the air, in the air or on the ground? Obviously, if you're a hitter, the dream is to pull the ball and get the ball in the air. That's where the most power is going to come. That is where home runs are going to come from most of the time. Last season, when he pulled he pulled the ball in the air 22% of the time, which was a pretty elite number. This year, it's 6.5%, which is one of the worst numbers in all of Major League Baseball. He is just not pulling the ball in the air. And when you look at why that is, I think the big reason is one other number that's on this page is what he has been able to do against fastballs. Last season, he smashed fastballs, as most guys do. He had a 460 slugging percentage. He was hitting 250. This year is a 280 slugging percentage against fastballs. When you can't hit fastballs and you can't pull anything to the air, it's going to be trouble. Do I think those 2 things are going to normalize? Do I think the pull in the air number is going to come back towards his league average, which is 18%? Yes. in which point I think he's going to be fine. So I'm not all the way out on Conforto. I think he figures this out. He's a veteran, but I have not been pumped or pleased with what we've seen so far.
Yeah, same. Those two, I'm not out on him either. It's too small a sample to say that this is who he is now. But those two things you mentioned are signs of a guy getting old.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he is 32. So to your point, I had kind of hoped that we'd be going the other direction just because we're getting, another year removed from some of the injury stuff that he's had to deal with in his career. And you would think getting out of San Francisco, getting in the Dodgers hitting sort of program, but
I still think that can happen too. I still think those things can come into play and make him, a productive member of this lineup.
Yeah. Tim G with the super chat. He says possible trade target Cedric Mullins, center fielder from the Orioles. My biggest fear, Anthony, when I just even looking, I think it's too early to look at many trade targets because so many teams make the major league playoffs and therefore so many teams are going to be in contention. Nobody's going to be looking to trade now. The Orioles 9-14 on the year right now. I obviously expect that team to be more competitive as the season goes on, at which point are they really going to be looking to move a guy who's a part of their group? But just initial reaction, Cedric Mullins, I mean, the batted ball profile on him is pretty encouraging. Obviously, he plays a position that is needed. Is he a guy that, fits more than just being a center fielder?
Yeah. I mean, look, if the Orioles were waving Cedric Mullins out there, dangling him out the window, I'm with Tim. Like, yes, that would be a guy I would have heavy interest in. That said, we're not even out of the first month of the season. The Orioles are not waving the white flag right now.
Yeah.
And like you said, he's not super young. He's 30, but he is a guy that they see as a piece of this group that can make a run. They're a long way away from, making that kind of call and say like, you know what, we're going to get rid of this guy and see what we can get for him. Looking at his stuff right now, when is he even a free agent?
He's a free agent next year. I was going to say, so the Orioles are the type of franchise. The Orioles are the type of franchise that if this thing were sort of puttering along in the middle, they might try and cash out of a guy like this and trade him away while the value is high. But again, they're going to be in the mix for a postseason spot. And so I just don't see them trading a guy who's in the starting lineup. All right, let's get to, I have a couple more questions for you briefly. We can run through these, Anthony. The second question was something I talked about on social media coming back to the game tonight. Is Dave Roberts to blame for this one? I was critical of how they handled Ben Kasparius. I retracted all of my commentary after Jack Dreyer got lit up because a lot of my assumptions were built on Jack Dreyer not being a total disaster, which he was tonight. Did you have any issue with how Dave Roberts handled this? Kasparius getting pulled after 9 batters with 1 out left in the 3rd inning.
I thought that was weird to bring Banda in, why not just let him finish that inning? There was no stress happening then. And Banda got in a little bit of trouble, right? He got 2 guys ended up getting on him before he got out of that.
Yeah.
I think, no, not really. To answer your question, no, I don't think like that was a terrible decision, not just because of the result. Like, okay, if that was part of your plan, you knew what you were going to do going into that inning. If this happened, then this. Okay, you stuck to that plan, fine. I think at some point, though, it's you're asking these guys to execute for better or for worse, right? Because some of these guys are probably tired. But yeah, I mean, in games where the last 2 nights where you're scoring this many runs, you should be 2-0.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if there was necessarily like a right button that Dave Roberts could have pushed that would have won them these games. Like, you put guys out there who you trust the night before and they don't come through, and then you have a bullpen game here, so you have to go with guys that you maybe don't necessarily trust, and you risk this blowing up in the way it did.
Yeah, I was originally frustrated because I thought the margins were so slim in this game based on who was and wasn't available. Tanner Scott was unlikely to be available. Vesia was not going to be available. And so you go down the list and look at who is. You've obviously got Noah Davis in the mix, Luis Garcia in the mix, some guys you don't feel incredible about necessarily. And so I did the math and said, you kind of need 5 innings from Jack Dreyer and Ben Kasparius. And then if you can get 1 from Evan Phillips and 1 from Bonda and 1 from Yates and 1 from Luis Garcia, that's how you get to 9. So the fact that they cut Kasparius short when he was cruising and could get the next guy into a clean inning, that frustrated me. Yeah. But the reason I retracted everything I said is because it was all dependent on Jack Dreyer doing his job. And Jack Dreyer, a guy with dog of the week last week, maybe the curse is back alive and well because he has his worst outing. He came into this one in his last 12 2/3 innings. He had allowed 1 hit, 6 walks, 16 strikeouts, obviously no runs. Tonight, it's 4 earned runs, 3 walks, and a hit for him. So he just didn't do his job, at which point it doesn't really matter what Dave Roberts does. Because if he had kept Kasparius in and then Dreyer does this, guess what? It doesn't matter. Noah Davis was going to have to pitch at some point if all of your guys weren't perfect, and they weren't tonight. So not on Dave for me.
Yeah, I agree. He's working with a slim deck there anyway.
Yep, exactly. Last question. What do the Dodgers need to do, Anthony, to break out of the skid they're in? I mentioned they've won 8 of their last 17 at this point. For a while, everyone was concerned about the offense. Now the offense has figured it out. The bullpen is now, struggling on a night like tonight. Obviously, again, whether or not Noah Davis counts as a member of this bullpen, I'll leave that up to the listener to decide. But the bullpen hasn't been awesome. The pitching staff isn't fully healthy. The pitching staff hasn't lived up to expectations quite yet. So how did the Dodgers sort of get out of this funk and put together a nice, win for their next 5 type of stretch?
Yeah, I think for me, I think it's one part me hoping something and one part something I think can happen. The hope part is between the Rockies series, between this Cubs series that we've seen. And I know that there was a series in there where it was, the offense was a little bit, still trying to find it completely. But between this little time frame here, the offense has shown signs of life again. And so hopefully that comes back to sort of stabilize to what we sort of expect. The part that I expect to happen is they can get some starting pitching that's solid coming up.
Yeah.
I think that goes a long way. It helps mask some offensive struggles, obviously, as we've seen this season already. And 2, this is a chance to sort of get that bullpen back to level in terms of their workload. And so I think you can do at least that thing. It's going to go a long way to helping you pick up some wins. You can get that thing and your offense getting right, you start to look like the Dodgers that we expect to see all season.
Well, and I kind of wonder, right? We went through a stretch where the offense was struggling. Now the last 2, the bullpen has sort of let them down. It seems like a stupid question to say, if you could have the offense going right or the bullpen going right, which would you rather have? But I do feel like if we want to be the utmost optimists tonight, we would say getting the offense going is long-term going to win you a lot more games than the bullpen being perfect. And so coming out of this series, at least feeling better about where the offense is, I feel better like today, I think, than I did a couple days ago. Losses aside, but just overall outlook for, the game in 2 days kind of a thing.
And I think that there's more tangible reason that we can grab onto for why the bullpen is struggling right now.
Yep. I mean, again, tonight, like it was Noah Davis, who's going to be DFA'd probably soon, or at least optioned, and Jack Dreyer, who had been amazing. So, Garcia, scoreless inning, Phillips, scoreless inning, Yates was awesome again, Bonda, fine, whatever, and Kasparius was great. So realistically, one guy who's in the mix really was bad tonight, and the other guy on the outside looking in. Hector with the super chat. If the Dodgers continue to struggle in center field, how long will it be before they shift their focus from offensive production to prioritizing defense instead? Is this in the next month or the All-Star break?
This is a good question, Hector. We've touched on the framing that he's laying out here and there, but like in a lot of hypotheticals, we're getting to a point now where like it's becoming a realistic conversation to have. Yeah. And so I like that the way he posed this, and basically saying if you're gonna have a guy that's going to produce a weighted runs created number of 90, but can't play defense, why not just have another guy who can produce an 85 or a 90, but who can give you like really good outfield defense? and we're talking about Paez and Outman here probably.
Yeah.
That's a good question. You know, when do you make that kind of call? I would say we're at least a month away, is what I would think.
Yeah. I think it's a fantastic question. It's one that, to your point, we've kind of been dancing around all season. I'm trying to see, just to put a little log on the fire, Anthony. James Outman's on a 7-game hitting streak. He's got 2 hits tonight. So, he's got that going for him. So just look, people hate Outman. Like, there's a lot of people that just cannot stand him because of his offensive approach, the whole deal. I understand it. I'm not even saying I would bring up Outman. I just think the question is a fair one. At what point do we just say, hey, Pages ain't doing it offensively. The defense is a mess. So give me the known commodity, which is Outman defensively, and the unknown/known negative, which is Outman offense, and I'm okay with that. At least there's some predictability, right? Whereas Pages base running and defense feels completely unpredictable. I think that would be the case to be made. I am not there yet, but I totally understand the question. And if we got there at some point, Anthony, I would not be totally surprised. Now, this is perfect timing because somebody just hopped in to the studio here this ball was just put on a tee for him. He is what we call, if there's a president of the fan club for James Outman, our guy Scott Geirman is whatever the opposite of that is. So, Scott, when do we shift from a guy who can't hit and a guy who can't field and a guy who can't run bases in center field to a guy who can at least do 2 of those 3 things competently, even if the third one makes you want to put your head through a wall?
First off, it's really good to see you guys. How are you tonight?
Like,
I know. I've been tuned in. As you know, chat. It's great to see you, Jeff, and it's awesome. I mean, look, there's a lot of different ways that we can take the conversation. I understand about Outman. There's a tweet out there that I put that it was like, there's something, if you need to stabilize a position, then there's options where you can do that defensively. And then I've always been like with the Kiermaier conversation, it was, you understand what you're getting with him. You're getting a glove. You take what you get with the bat, but at least you solidify the defense. You know what I mean? So I understand where you're at from there. I've even said it before. You can find the tweet about just give me some stabilization in center field. I don't know. Like, I hear it. I just would like to go with an option. If they have it, if they can find a way to stabilize center field with Tommy Edman, man, like, he's so smooth out there. If that's the way they go, Jeff, I know you love him at second base. I do too. But I think that if you dive back into the James Outman stuff, then you're pushing Andy Paez into a platoon with Michael Conforto in left. And I'm okay with it all around, man. I would like to see Tommy Edman get some more run in center field. I think that, for me, stabilizes it. And then you have options in the infield. Get some Chris Taylor run in there. Get some, Ha-Seong Kim. They've got other ways to go, man.
Yeah. I mean, let me ask you that, because you mentioned if a guy like Outman were to be in the mix, then all of a sudden you are platooning Michael Conforto with Andy Pages, which is, I think there's a lot of people in the chat that may not be James Outman fans that may have just slightly become James Outman fans at the prospect of Michael Conforto being in a full-time platoon, because I know he's not a guy that's overly popular right now.
Sure.
So, I mean, do you think that's, like, in your mind, is that a real part of the equation, which is if we can solidify either center field or second base and somehow keep Pages on the roster, then all of a sudden maybe it actually adds strength to a corner outfield spot because both those guys are hitting on the right side of platoons?
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I'll say, yes, I think there's a line where the Dodgers do things best is find the best things a player can do. And we've seen Andy Pages. I've made some jokes. If he only had a brain, then he would be, a stellar ball player. He's got tools. He's got a cannon. We've seen this in the past. Reckless abandonment. You go out there. Yeah, we've seen it. I forgot. I think Joe Davis had a line to, like, last night or tonight. It was like, it made me think of, I know people are going to laugh, but it's like Puig with the arm. It's that if he just made some decisions, he can uncork one wherever. But we've seen him. I was at Jackie Robinson night where he uncorked a couple throws from right field. And then it was like, I didn't know he had that in his bag, because in center field, you don't get to see it on. You see the plays where he has to think or make a good throwing decision. Instead, when you're in a corner spot, like we saw with Teoscar last year, you're firing one. You're cutting down a runner, taking an extra base, tagging up. I'd love Andy Pages, and I think he would flourish in a corner spot, get him back in a platoon against lefties where he was exceptional last year. Jeff, I wanted to, I know this might sidetrack it. I was going to type it in chat before I came on. I think there's more things to talk about with like Max Muncy, where we're at with him, where we're at with Mookie Betts. Shohei Ohtani's got to get going. I see everybody in chat. I don't just pop in when things are bad. I really think this is a moment when people have to take a breath and look around. And there's a lot of things that once they stabilize and the sample gets to about 150 at bats, then we can talk about it, because it's too many things right now. The pitching isn't going well. The offense is showing up when the pitching doesn't do it. I want to hush that for a second, because everybody's going off way too hard. Like, you can put out every single fire this early. You just can't.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, the record is what it is. Anthony, I want to let you chime in on the idea of sort of solving second base and center field, and then actually keeping Pages around to be in the right side of a platoon. And then we can move on. But Anthony, I want to get your thoughts on that before we do.
Yeah, I'm with Scott on the 150 plate appearance thing. It's generally the number organizations will use to say, like, yay or nay on something.
Yeah.
I personally, right now, would rather see Edmund in center, and then you fix the second base spot from there. So whether that's Freeland or Kim or whatever, I at the moment, I tend to think maybe Freeland gets the first, kind of right of refusal, sort of, so to speak. And let's see if he can play second base, and let's see if he can keep the bat to ball skills at the major league level. And then, you can keep the platoon in left. Before I would want to see Outman up, unless Outman just all of a sudden starts that 7 games hitting streak turns into 30 or something like that, right? Then sure. But because I think you give yourself the best chance there of maybe getting somebody who can do both things for you. Beyond that, down the road, Pages is still this version of him. Then I would be in the camp of, let's get something that we know is predictable, which is really good center field defense. Then I would be in the camp of, you know what? We gave you a legitimate shot. You could not win the position full time. We're going to now bring Outman up, and we're going to let him roam that position.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Freeland, because I remember being on Twitter, a month ago, and saying, why can I get an info on why nobody's talking about this guy who's a top 50 prospect everywhere, who's the most major league guy they had on the position player side outside of Dalton Rushing, who plays a harder defensive position, which is shortstop. Again, maybe I'm naive to think, if you could play shortstop, how hard is it to move over to second base? And who, by the way, is absolutely hitting the ball in AAA at the same time. So to me, he's the name that never gets brought up. I'll add, and I haven't paid super close attention. But Estuary Ruiz is like another name where they traded a real dude in Duran for him. And I'm not everybody knows, if you saw my tweets when they traded for him, I'm not the biggest Estuary Ruiz fan. But other than Freeland, we're basically talking about a bunch of dudes with one major flaw somewhere in their game. And you could argue Freeland's is that he doesn't play second base, which is a small problem when we're talking about playing second base. But you've got a bunch of guys with different options. Ruiz is hitting in AAA. He's got that going for him. A 292 average, 852 OPS through tonight's game. So, Scott, you mentioned you would like to move Edman to center field. Give me the ideal. Scott is in charge. Friedman calls you and says, hey, buddy, the keys are yours. Whatever you want to do at second base, just let us know. We got 2 days. We got private planes everywhere. Who do you want playing second base in 2 days?
Is anybody going to get mad if I say Mookie Betts? Bring Freeland up and let him
stop it.
Is anybody going to get mad? Is anybody?
Jeff is going to get mad. Is who's going to get mad?
I've long said before that Blake and I talk, a bit, best buddies. So it's like, I know for the current group, Mookie Betts where it's at, leave him there. I would like to move Mookie Betts second base, but if we're going to keep him at shortstop, I'd like to give Freeland some run. I'd like to give Freeland some run. I really would. If it's not Kim, I like what he's doing, but they've been giving him run in center field for a reason. It just doesn't happen. Like, it's a position he never played, and they're giving him some time out there. He's hitting the ball, but in 2 days, I would say give Freeland a nod. 23-year-old switch hitter. He's raking against righties. They do need some help there. You've got to figure out, a way to do it. I think that would bring him up, let him play his natural position if you can, but if not, put him at second base. I would love to give him a shot. It's been a long time, guys, since we've had a prospect come up. If it's not going to be Dalton Rushing, then let it play a middle infield position. Let it be Alex Freeland. I yearn for some position player to come up from the minor leagues and have an impact. I don't care if they go crazy like a Yasiel Puig thing. I just want to give some spark, give somebody a look, because the veterans on there, we're seeing these problems at the back end and the bench, Chris Taylor, Miguel Rojas, all these guys where it's just not getting it done. And it's happening a lot earlier. We saw this, and I remember we hopped on one live. I remember closer towards the deadline, and we were like, this is a team that it's problems that the Dodgers haven't dealt with in some years. Just this much dysfunction towards the bottom half with a like core group of 4 or 5. And now we're just seeing it again. But it's happening at a time where pitching's down. So all the problems are magnified. I would
Laura
like to see.
Yeah. Sorry, Laura with the
bro.
super chat
You're
is
good.
right on that. She says, am I the only one surprised we have this many holes this early? Serious question. To me, Anthony, what makes this, I'm the optimist, so this is going to sound optimistic. I'm preparing everybody. It feels like we have lots of holes, and we're going to talk Max Muncy here in a second. It feels like we have lots of holes when I really think we only have one hole. The problem is that Tommy Edman bounces between plugging one hole and plugging the other hole. Yeah. And so it feels like there's 2 gaps when really there's just one. If they had anybody that they felt decent about in center field or second base, I don't think it would feel like we had this many holes. I would also add, and this is the conversation I was having with my dad via text tonight, which is, hey, he thinks he's like, Barnes sucks, Rojas sucks, Taylor sucks, all these guys at the bottom of the bench sucks. What are we doing? And I'm like, look, agree, maybe. But my point is, like, those guys are not among the 13 best position players they have in the organization, without a doubt. The problem is they're sitting on the bench. Like Chris Taylor, we could all say how much we hate Chris Taylor. We're 25 games in, he has 12 plate appearances. So, like, you can't really hate a guy who gets 1 plate appearance every less than 2 days. So, to me, it feels like, Anthony, there's just one hole at either second base or center field. If they solved one of those, then maybe this conversation goes away. Am I crazy on that, Anthony?
No, you're not. And we have talked about this before too. If they would commit to plugging one of those holes, then the other ones start to take a little bit more shape and solidify themselves a little bit more. What they're trying to do, and I understand this, I'm not saying that they're wrong for this. A lot of fans might think they're wrong because we're in a frustrating time, even though it's April 23rd. But they are trying to give the guys a legitimate chance before they cut bait on some of these things, Paez being the main guy here. And so what Edman is being able to do is bounce back and forth to extend that leash for these guys and to extend that runway to get them through the first couple of months of the season so that the Dodgers can make a more informed decision on what they're going to do for the rest of the season. And that's what Edman is giving them right now. He's giving them some slack there. If they would just commit to say, you know what, he is going to be our second baseman or he is going to be our center fielder, then they can find the fix for that other position. And hopefully those things then start to solidify and you don't these become problems that you don't have to deal with. And maybe the bottom or the order gets helped also. Because like I said, I'm willing to give Muncy some space here and let him do his thing. I know we're getting into that as a veteran and a guy who was pretty good last year and a guy who in the last couple of weeks, 10 games or so, has shown some signs of life. He's not there yet, but it's like, okay, you're not flatlining on us anymore. Okay. But I think the biggest situation for this team that could have a domino effect in solving some of these other issues, including like left field, is committing to Edman at one of these 2 positions.
Scott, let's talk third base. I agreed with Anthony's sentiment that it looked like Muncy was showing signs of life. Unfortunately, in the last 2 or 3 games, it feels like we've maybe gone back in the wrong direction. 1 for 10 with 5 Ks in the last 3 coming into tonight. He's a weird one because, to Anthony's point, I've said before, I will be I want to be slow to give up on a guy rather than quick to dump on him. And so that's where I'm at with Muncy. He has not been very good this year. There's some metrics, barrel rate, hard hit rate, that have been encouraging. Obviously, chase rate, whiff rate have been pretty bad. But it sounds like, Scott, that you're, I don't want to say completely over the Max Muncy experience as a Dodger, but where are you at with him short term?
It's a tough case. It's a tough case. I mean, we all got to see, or what Blake Williams reported that Max Muncy's offseason stuff was focusing on a lot of ground balls, and that's an approach that, what the hell are you doing after you're making a career off being a 3 true outcome guy? and he's doing this, and we're at, I'm looking at his stuff here. We're at an 84 plate appearance. I don't know if that's updated today. Hold on. Sorry about that. We're uppers. We're like 85 plate appearances on the year without a homer. Yeah. And his strikeout rate is approaching, I think it's mid-30s right now. Sure, if there's been some bad luck there, we can see his eye at different points, but it's not looking good for him. We talked, I think, I think early February. I looked at his contract and I was like, oh, it's going to be like $10 million. That's an easy pickup. Yeah. We're getting to a point now where that's like, I'm not sure you even do that. Like, I think this might be the last year for Max Muncy with the Dodgers. Like there are some alarming things with him. I think there's been some bad luck mixed in with his outcomes, but he just looks completely off. And we know he's a streaky guy. We've seen it. 3 true outcome dudes are streaky. Look at Jock Peterson. But Max Muncy right now is in a hole where he's just so in between. I don't think he knows what to do. And the fact that he's 85 at bats, 85 plate appearances without a homer, not finding the slug in there. He's piquing my radar here, where we're looking at a hole. We're looking at a legitimate hole at third base at the moment.
Scott, do you know what? Hold on, real quick, Scott. Do you know what position Alex Freeland played in Oklahoma City tonight?
Third base.
Third base. Seventh start in 23 appearances at third base. So I don't know if that's you move Muncy over to second because Freeland hasn't really played all that much second base. I don't know if that's a long-term play, but I thought it was interesting. Anthony, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of things to add to what Scott said is I'm with you. That option is looking less and less likely right now. The other thing though is that he doesn't have any trade value. And so they're not in the camp to just dump on a guy like that, especially when he's been their starter. They would have done that with Justin Turner if that was sort of their MO. I don't think we see that with them. I do think that they're gonna let his runway play out. And we keep saying that word because so many guys are struggling, but he's a veteran and he was actually pretty good last year. And so that weird WTF offseason that he's just admitted to us, I think is he's going to now have some time to try to get back on the right side of that and be like, hey man, be the guy that you were. Stop trying to reinvent yourself at age 35 or whatever it is. And let's see if you can get back there and show us some signs of life and start to hit the ball with some power again. If not, then sure, his contract isn't so hefty that they can't sit him on the bench for a while. So I'm all with that, and I think that's fine. But I think that we're still, just to put this out there in the ether for the fans who are super frustrated with this guy, I don't think we're that close to him being a guy who ends up sitting on the bench anytime soon. I think they're gonna give him a chance to hit himself out of this. Still, I
agree. I totally agree, Ann, for sure. And this is another question I want to ask to both of you. And I could pull Max Muncy right out of this group. I really wanted to ask, because of how we know, and this will be great for the chat, the viewers watching, people frustrated with some of the veteran players. I'd love to know where you two are at on some of the guys who are veteran players who could have their spots are actually at legitimate risk of being gone. Like, who could actually, if we know Chris Taylor's just hanging out, if we know Kike Hernandez is just hanging out for the postseason, which better be all right with everybody. It better be all right with everybody because we know what he can do. Which veteran player who is underperforming is actually at risk of the team, pulling a Jason Hayward and saying, we're okay. We're okay. That's something that I've asked myself. I really think it's Miguel Rojas. Yeah. I really do. I don't think there's much value there. I just want to know where you two are at on that.
Yeah. First of all, I love it. I mean, I was on the show never believing they were going to do Jason Hayward like they ended up doing Jason Hayward last year, because it just didn't seem like their MO. And then they did it. And J-Hay was a beloved dude. He was Freddie Freeman's best friend. So it was the ultimate, like, if they're going to do it to him, they will do it to anybody.
Well, I will say this, though, on that. I will say this, though, and I said it at the time. It was surprising that they did it, given who he is and who he was in the clubhouse, but he had only been there for a year and a half.
Yeah.
Whereas a guy like Justin Turner had been there a while, Max Muncy's been there a while, same with Taylor, etc. So, like, yes, it was surprising, but he was still a fairly new guy into this culture.
Yeah. I think it's a great question, and it's one I've been asking myself. To Anthony's point, like, so we're on year 3 of Miguel Rojas. Mm-hmm. My position on Miguel Rojas is well documented. I don't know what he brings. And it's kind of the same, like if you're just looking on the surface, the argument for and against Miguel Rojas and Austin Barnes are very similar, with the one exception being one of those two guys has been here forever. One of those two guys is the backup catcher, so who cares? And one of those two guys is really good friends with Clayton Kershaw, and the other guy isn't any of those three things. And so I think Rojas is I would not be shocked if he does not survive the season with the Dodgers, because I just,
there you go.
Offensively, he gives you nothing. Defensively,
I'll give you one better. I'll be shocked if he does.
Yeah.
I'll be stunned if he makes it through the season.
Yeah. I mean, so we'll just do this rapid fire then. Scott, Chris Taylor. Do you think Chris Taylor survives the year on the Dodgers?
Yes, I do. And that
one of my bold predictions was he's on a playoff roster. People hated that one. That one might be, but you know, it's not too, he can make it to the end of the year and not be on the playoff roster. So you don't have to go all that far, but you think he makes it to the end of the road.
Somebody, I think it might've been the last show that Blake and I did together. Somebody asked me about Chris Taylor. We were scrambling to find the date for his tenure. And people were trying to bait me into saying that right after he hits that, they're just going to cut bait, or they're just going to find some reason. And I was just like, don't do this to me. I think he stays. I think he's one of those guys that's been around. I think he stays.
Chris Taylor has a long way to go. Like he's just over 9 years of service time, and I think you have to get to 10. So I mean, he's got like 100+ more days to go. Anthony, do you think Chris Taylor makes it to the end of the year on the Dodgers roster?
Yeah, I do. And yes, they're doing him a solid, right? Like they're letting him get there with them. Like that's important to him. It's important to them. And believe it or not, it's important to the guys that he shares a clubhouse with. Yeah. They value that sort of thing. And then they value organizations who do guys that way. Despite some things I've seen, he's not a clubhouse cancer. I don't know where anyone has gotten that from. If anything, he's the opposite. The guy never plays. And like, he's at every big team outing that you see posted on social media. He's on Mookie Betts' podcast. Like they love this guy. Yeah. So I'm not sure where that's come from, but he will absolutely make it through this season.
So 172 days, by the way, is an MLB service year. He's at 9 years and 37 days. So he's got to get like another 135 days before he gets to that 10-year mark, if you're trying to count to that point. So, you know, do the math, and we're well past the trade deadline.
So we're all going to team this. We're all team Miguel Rojas. That's the 40-man spot that we create for Alex Freeland, or Heston Kim is the savior. We're going to do this.
Yeah. Look,
united.
If it were up to me, he wouldn't be the only person on that list, but for the sake of the chat not imploding as we do this, and myself being on that island all by myself, we'll just leave it at Miguel Rojas for now. It's, you know, I'll just leave it there. One thing I was going to say, circling back to Muncy real quick. Optimistic Jeff wants to just hop back in here real quick and just give you a couple things. Some people, you guys are with me on this. Moreno hates all the expected numbers and all the fake stuff, all this.
Yes.
Muncy's expected numbers this year are actually pretty good. Like his expected slugging percentage in 2025 is the exact same as it was in 2024 when he was very good. His expected weighted on base average is 338. So like if he were just meeting expectations as far as that's based on batted ball profile, whiff rate, all that kind of stuff, we're looking at a guy who'd be like a 780 to 800 OPS guy. And I don't think we're complaining all that much. So I think there's a little bit of bad luck mixed in with Max Muncy. And I think we're seeing the worst version of him at the same time. So I'm not saying he's going to be 2024 version, but I think he's league average at worst by the end of this season. That's my 2 cents there. Let's do a couple injury updates real quick before we get to some questions, because there was some Dodgers news that hit today. Blake Snell was the first one. He scrapped a bullpen that he was scheduled to throw today because yesterday he felt some discomfort after playing catch. He will be re-examined when they return to Los Angeles. This according to David Fassé. Dave Roberts said that the Dodgers have been stressing to Snell, hey, big picture in mind. We don't want you to be pitching through anything. Scott, if five alarms is the worst that it could possibly get, how many alarms are going off when you read this Fassé report?
I'm gonna say 4.
Okay.
But I don't think he's playing. I don't think he's pitching again this year. I've got the same concern. I've got the same concern I did when it came to hearing the initial stuff last year with Yamamoto. It was that there is long-term implications at hand. I don't think to now hearing that report, they are going to slow this down to a grinding halt and make sure they get all the imaging they can. But I'll err on the side of caution that if they think that he could miss significant time, they just won't push. They won't press him at all.
So you think, Scott, you're saying you think he's done for the year. We've seen the last of Blake Snell in 2025.
I have to see what comes to that imaging. If they say like he's going to miss time, they will just baby that all year.
Anthony, where are you at on a scale of 1 to 5? How many alarms are going off when you read that they scrapped a bullpen after he felt discomfort playing catch yesterday?
Yeah, if done for the year is 5, I'm at like a 3.
Okay.
I tweeted out earlier that this feels like a all-star break, kind of like we hope he's back by then sort of situation or around then.
That'd be nice.
The interesting thing with this is that, look, we all know how we trust Dodger injury reports, but the fact that they kept letting him go out and throw bullpens, having like they've done imaging on his arm, they know what this looks like. That tells me that they weren't seeing anything significant enough that they thought he couldn't make it back soon.
Yeah.
But this, whatever it is that's lingering there, is obviously now going to keep him off the mound. And so what is it that they're either not telling us or that they're missing in the medicals there that is causing that discomfort, causing that pain, that now at this point, you got to figure best case scenario, we're looking at like a July kind of return.
Yeah.
What is it that is not there? Either they're not seeing or they're not telling us that's causing this for a guy like him.
Yeah. My only pushback as the chief non-medical expert on this panel here is it doesn't always feel like imaging is perfect. It doesn't always feel like, well, we have the image and therefore we have 100% certainty about what is or is not going on. And so that's my only concern is I feel like this wouldn't be the first time that there's imaging that comes back clean and then it doesn't feel good. And then all of a sudden they get a different picture or a different angle or something like that. And all of a sudden there's something more concerning there. I put up the admin saying Robert said the first MRI was best case scenario, said they dodged a bullet, no structural damage, no surgery expected. So we'll see. It's concerning because it's Snell, right? Like if this was a different pitcher who doesn't have the lengthy injury concerns, then maybe you'd feel a little bit more confident that by August we'd be seeing this guy back on the mound. But if it's a guy like Snell, if it's a guy like Tyler Glass now, I think you just immediately go to the worst. And so that's one. Update number 2, though, is Will Smith. Will Smith was out of the game today. He had a sore wrist, sort of jammed it on the tag play at home yesterday. He says it's not too concerning. He did go out and hit a double after jamming his wrist yesterday. Of course, then today, Austin Barnes on that throw to third smashed his hand onto Dansby Swanson's bat. So he stayed in the game. We'll see how many new catchers are on the Dodgers roster, if any, by the time this one comes around. But Anthony, real quick, I mean, this one seems like no big deal on the Will Smith front. I'm
going to say feels like no big deal, but I won't be stunned if in 6 weeks someone tells us that, like, oh, remember back in Chicago when he hurt his hand on that tag play? It's been lingering the whole time.
Oh, no.
I think, Scott, I think it was Chad Moriyama on Twitter basically said, I would like for once Will Smith not to get to the end of the season with 12 lingering issues. Like, maybe just let him rest this guy and get this back to 100%. Although if Austin Barnes is the backup option, I shouldn't be advocating for that. But any concern from you, Scott, on Will Smith getting the off day today?
Maybe. I mean, they're just going to see how it feels. Anthony gave me, flat, like that was like an insane thing to say because you put it in my mind and I can like picture seeing the headline in my mind that Will Smith out for 6 weeks, or we get very far in the season. It was like Will Smith hitting the IL with lingering injury for, that's been festering since April. But if he does miss some time, who we need to see there?
Fiducia.
Not big AB. No, man. It's the big position prospect that we finally can see instead of being blocked by Kershaw's buddy. We need Dalton Rushing, man. We need it.
Do you think, like, give me the odds, Scott? If Will Smith were to go on the injured list, let's say it's like 2 to 4 weeks. I'm not saying it's this, but if he were to miss 2 to 4 weeks, like, what percentage do you think it would be Dalton rushing, and what percentage do you think would be Hunter Fiducia as far as who gets the call?
No, percentage wise, I don't have a percentage.
Like, do you think rushing? Do you feel confident that it would be rushing over Fiducia?
I would hope so. I think that the organization has to find out that would be a great opportunity where we always talk about if they bring someone up, you want to give them some run. That is a great time for them to do it. Give him starting reps, see if he can play a big league backstop. Let Austin Barnes spell when he needs to. That would be a great spot for him for sure. Like, I couldn't think of, I don't want Will Smith on the injured list, but if he has to do it, that is as ideal of a scenario as you can get. Perfect.
Yeah. Look, if it were, I think rushing is clearly a better long-term player than Hunter Fiducia. Anthony, I just wonder if, even though that's what we would all want as fans, is the hot prospect with the huge bat, if they would actually do that, or if they would just say, hey, Fiducia's the guy. He's an upgrade over Austin Barnes. He's a guy they probably trust a little more actually behind the dish, if they would just go the conservative route. Again, I'm not saying that's what I would do. I'm just asking the question.
Right. I think they have to, if it's going to be a amount of time, like let's say 2 weeks or more, they got to give Dalton rushing a look. I think they have to. Otherwise, when is it?
Yeah.
If not in a situation like that, then when?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's 24. Like, if there ever comes a time where, like, oh boy, we can get Byron Buxton.
I know where you're going.
Like that, right? And you go, we'll give you Dalton rushing. The Twins are going to go, why haven't you brought him up yet?
Oh, because they've seen Austin Barnes. They know the scouting report. They've seen Austin Barnes throwing guys out at third base against the Cubs, Anthony. They know why Dalton rushing isn't up.
It's not only going to cost you Dalton rushing, because we don't know if he's a major leaguer, because you and your organization clearly don't believe in him. It's going to cost you Zaire Hope also. Like,
yeah, but come on. I mean, but the flip side is, what if he comes up for 2 weeks and hits 170? You know, I don't think.
Then two things happen. Either you can say, okay, here's what you need to work on now. Here's what we saw you exposed for this thing. Now we know, because he's never had a real big league stint.
I'm talking trade. I'm talking strictly from a trade perspective. I don't buy the idea that a team is going to look down on Dalton rushing and value him less because the Dodgers don't call him up.
Oh, I guarantee you they will. I know they do. I know they do that. If a guy's 25 and the Dodgers are called up by his team, they absolutely take that as a sign that the organization that has him, that has had opportunities to bring him up and not just sit on the bench, but to actually play, but they haven't done that, and they brought up Hunter Fiducia instead. They absolutely see that as a red flag, and will try to get more out of the trade.
Guys age out.
Guys age out. Stuff like this. Yes.
No chance. If it's a 2 week stretch and Will Smith is your everyday catcher and he can't play first and he can't play DH and he's learning the outfield, there is no chance a team is going to look at this player in this situation in a 2 week window and say, oh, you didn't call him up for that 2 week window, therefore he must be a lesser prospect. Teams are like, I mean, maybe I'm giving teams way too much credit. That would be insanity on the part of any other organization to make that judgment call.
He's talking.
I'm not saying that they wouldn't take him, Jeff. I'm saying that they would go, we want him, and
it diminishes value. I find that hard to believe.
Okay, then let me ask you this. I'm telling you it does. I know it does. I've talked to these people in the front offices who have said, yeah, we're going to try to milk this because we think that they don't trust that guy as a major league player. If not in a situation like that, where you know it's going to be 15 games at least, where he would have the opportunity to play every day, then when?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're the Dodgers, like you might be talking about a scenario where it's any other roster in the league that is not as loaded as like doesn't have as many holes.
But then you have an opening. I'm not saying like you're trying to create one for this guy. I'm saying the opportunity has come. And so then if you're not going to give him that opportunity, then when does his opportunity arise? I'm saying, and you see him being called up.
It has to be longer. Like I don't think the runway can be 2 weeks. That's the point that I'm making.
But he's playing. He's not sitting. That's my point. Is like I'm not saying they're judging the guy's entire future based off those 2 weeks. I'm just saying that would be a perfect time to be able to bring him up. And even if he struggles, say, all right, hey, you got your 2 weeks in. Here's what we saw. Here's what we need you to work on. But if you don't bring him up at all, that does say something to not just him and other organizations, but people in your organization. Like, do we think this guy has it, at least at that position?
Yeah. I mean, I think Dalton Rushing should be called up. I want to make that abundantly clear. I think if another team saw the Dodgers with a 2-week window and the Dodgers said, we're going to just bring Fiducia up for 2 weeks because he's on the 40-man roster, we can call him up, we can send him back down. We trust him more with the pitching staff than we do with Dalton Rushing behind the dish. The defense is a little bit more solid, et cetera, et cetera. And if a team looks at that and says, move Dalton Rushing down the board, move him down on the value, we're going to ask for more. Because other piece, like I said, Rushing's not on the 40-man. So you got to add him to the 40-man as well, which is a part of the equation. So again, you said you've had those conversations. I'm skeptical that would apply to this particular situation. But if it were me, I would call Rushing up. I'm not disagreeing there.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I think there's a higher likelihood that they would call Fiducia up than a lot of people maybe would hope for.
If he was 21, Jeff, I'd be more inclined to be like that. Yes, I'm on board with you. You're right. He's 24 and he's been a top prospect in their organization for a while now. And for him to not have had any opportunity when there has been spots available at times, even in like September, and for him to not get that shot, I'm not saying anybody would be right to do this or to devalue him or anything like that. But I'm just saying, like, if not in a situation like that, then when?
Yeah. I mean, less than 3 years ago when he was drafted. So
he's
not like
back to catching. He's back to catching. So you're walking that line where I don't want to see another top hitting prospect age out. The Dodgers are in a spot where that constantly happens, and you see the value of these prospects. Diego Cartaya, I saw that.
They got a ton for Diego Cartaya.
Yeah, it's just you have to strike when it's hot. If there's a spot, you have to do it. And if they're going to hit their way, how many times have we seen a prospect look like they're hitting their way onto the big league roster? And it just doesn't happen. They just don't call them up. Somebody's just on an absolute tear, and they're playing themselves into a spot, and they just don't capitalize on it. I think you have to strike. You have to give them some opportunity.
Yeah, and we'll see. Okay, let's get to 3 super chats. Maybe a couple questions. We'll be out of here. We talked about 150 plate appearances. So Fritz, sorry for the delay here. Anthony, I'll just come to you on this one. What's the 150 plate appearance version of Page's terrible defense and fielding, or fielding and base running? How many awful attempts in center field and on the bases do we have to see before we give up? They want to know.
I think we're at like the equivalent of 250 for that stuff.
Yeah, we're well past.
That's not going to get any better.
Shelly says, this was a frustrating 2 games. Hopefully I can sleep tonight. I hope they get rid of Rojas. We all agree there. Scott, Laura wants to know which offseason acquisition will have the biggest impact in the postseason. You've got some bullpen arms. You've got a couple rotation arms. You've got a corner outfielder. Which offseason guy do you think has the biggest impact?
That's a great question. Laura, good to see you. Tanner Scott.
Okay. Anthony, you want to answer this one?
That was going to be my answer too.
Oh,
so
man.
I won't take it. Go
ahead. Cook. You can go. Yeah, Cook. Forget I said that. I got another one.
Okay. I'll say it'll be Kirby Yates then.
Nice.
Okay. Was that going to be your next guess answer there, Scott?
He's on. We're on the same train. Relievers, man. Relievers. You know those guys. Yeah, vet arms. We can just stay there.
Leverage guys in October, man.
Blake Snell. Blake Snell's going to be locked and loaded by the postseason, folks. It's going to be Blake Snell.
From your lips to God's ears, Jeffrey.
Let's go.
I hope so.
Let's go. Michael Confortos, the
NLCS MVP.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, let's do. Noisy Ninja said, don't know if you guys watch Mookie's podcast. He mentions the main reason him playing shortstop is so that Teo could play right and re-sign with the team. Thoughts on this, Anthony?
Yeah, I saw that. I did see that. Look, I don't have a problem with Mookie Betts playing shortstop, and he's actually starting to become a pretty serviceable defensive player at that position. I'm for it because where would this team be without Teo right now?
Yeah. Look, nobody believes Mookie Betts when he says anything about why he's playing shortstop. This is one of my favorite narratives. Is like, no matter how many people say why he's playing shortstop, everyone's like, nah, he's just selfish and wants to play shortstop. None of it matters. So I'm not saying they're even wrong. It's just funny to me. What'd you say, Scott?
I was gonna say it's like people are gonna start calling him the LeBron of Major League Baseball, just constantly making stuff up.
Yeah. No, it's like Dave Roberts could say something or Mookie could say something, and everybody's like, yeah, but like. I'm pretty sure. ... So
we all know his best position is second base. Come on.
there we go. Admin saying he's just doing it because he wants.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Back to back. Last one. We'll go out on this one. Anthony, more likely to pitch in October, Ohtani or Snell?
Ooh, good one.
Oh my
Ohtani.
God, I haven't even thought about Ohtani pitching yet. Oh my.
Scott, Ohtani at least is theoretically trending in the right direction, even though we haven't seen him pitch this year.
Shohei Ohtani. Shohei Ohtani, because I have to go in line with my Snell thoughts until further notice.
100% on both of them, folks. There's your game 1 starter. There's your game 2 starter. Game 3. Sorry, Yamamoto gets with Snell game 1, Yamamoto game 2, Ohtani game 3.
The NLDS is just we're going to go the whole full-on Land of the Rising Sun rotation on him.
There you go. Sasaki, yeah, we'll see. Dustin May, where are we at, Scott? Give me like your 30 seconds on Dustin May, and then I want 30 seconds on where you're at with Roki Sasaki. Dustin May's a freaking roller coaster.
Yeah, because I'll admit, this last thing I was doing a hitting clinic with some softball gals, helping out the youth. So I missed the blow up part. But once I saw you guys said he locked it in, he's pitching. He's pitching strikeout stuff. We're still figuring his way there, but he's turned some heads. He's figuring some stuff out. It's definitely surprising for me. Stuff's always going to be filthy, but I'm kind of away from my original prediction saying, yeah, he'd be better in the bullpen. Just let him start. Just let him start till he can.
One good start, one bad start. I should say one good start, one okay start, one really good start, one really bad start. So it's like every time I'm like, I'm back in on Dustin May, then he's terrible and he can't strike anyone out. Then I'm out. Then he's awesome again. And then he gets shelled. Where are you at on Roki Sasaki, Scott?
He's figuring it out. He's definitely figuring it out. The outing against Philadelphia, that was one where I'm seeing him go toe-to-toe with some of these hitters, these veteran guys, and I believe he's learning more and more every time out. I really need that his off speed to be hit. I need his fastball velocity to stay at a good place where he can work that, where he wants to. The drop was a bit eerie for me. It caught me off guard quite a bit. I want to get Ant's thoughts on Roki's fastball velocity and kind of what that made you feel like, because when I saw it, if he's working in that, if they told him to pull a little bit off so we can locate a little bit better, get a different, look profile, IBB, whichever, it kind of made me a little bit uneasy.
Yeah, we talked about this on Sunday. I think that Philadelphia start we're going to look back on this season and assuming his health, we're going to look at that start as a turning point.
Yeah,
I think
for sure.
And in just how his approach to Major League Baseball is on that last start over the weekend, I thought the dip in velocity, I used the word deliberate. I thought his mechanics were really deliberate, like slower than normal. I compared it to like a golf swing where like you stand over the ball and you're thinking about every piece of the swing, and I have to get the club to here and my hand should be here and yada, yada, yada. It felt like that's how he was delivering the baseball. And then as he got more comfortable in the start, he started to let it go a little bit more. And so I think with him right now, he's really battling his mechanics. I think that's what caused a lot of his issues before. That's a thing that they can get right. And I think that Philly start is important because that's the one that showed him I can compete at this level. Now he's just got to get the stuff out around that right. And then I think he'll be fine.
Yeah. Adding the third pitch, throwing a bunch more sliders, I think is going to be a monumental game changer for him. And I think it was intentional that they were holding that pitch back just to let him get used to the first 2 pitches. But it became clear, I think, in those first 3 that he was going to need one other thing. So, okay, last question. Pitching matchup. I joked in game 1 or early on in the season that Snell-Skubal might have been the best pitching matchup we see all season in all of Major League Baseball. I was wrong because on Friday we're getting Yamamoto Skeens, who it's still involving the Dodgers, but Yamamoto Skeens I think is a higher ticket item than Snell and Skubal this year. Anthony, I'll come to you, then Scott, then we'll close out. Give me your what are you looking forward to besides the obvious in this one?
This is what we're here for. Friday night. Give it to me. I'm looking forward to 7 shutout from my guy Yama. And I hope we put it on Skeens because you know what? I'm going to tell you, I said this on Sunday, I think. Yamamoto's Cy Young candidacy is going to have to battle through the national narrative around Paul Skeens, and out-dueling him on Friday could go a long way to breaking through that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you,
agree.
Scott.
Yeah, that's a great point. It is a thing. Like the battle out-dueling other Cy Young guys, even if it's an April start. I'll be at the game on Sunday with the kiddos, but I am bummed that I won't be there for this start. I just know the more Yamamoto gets a handle on his splitter, which has been unbelievable. I think one of his splitters this year has been hit in the air. I think that's it.
Yeah, that was his stat.
Yeah, only
that
one.
is
With the 50%
he's on a
whiff
run
rate
right now. Like the Yankees got to be beating themselves up. I know they just got freed, but you're beating yourselves up now. We're seeing stuff from Yamamoto right now where he's going toe to toe with the best pitchers in Major League Baseball, because guess what? He's a top 3 pitcher in Major League Baseball right now. He is just as composed as can be. He's stoic out there. He is locked in. He's, 5'10", and he's a powerhouse, man.
I'm going to share a little insight into my Dodger chat with my brother and my dad. We have taken Happy Kershaw Day and retired that for a while.
No, stop it. That's not allowed. I'm going to boot you out of this channel. Witrado, he's still alive
right now. I said for a while. He's not throwing. There is no such thing as a Kershaw Day.
Yesterday was Happy Kershaw Day. I hope you sent that text message. AA Tulsa, wherever he was pitching.
Way to poop on this. Now it's going to be anticlimactic because Jeff just shut it down. But
you're dumping on my guy Kershaw. Come on now, Anthony. He's still alive, buddy. He's still breathing.
Cook, Anthony, cook. Go, go, go.
We have now gone to Happy Yamamoto Day.
Can't get behind it.
Wow. I actually have a chat. I do have a buddy who's on that.
What I just heard is Jeff is a Paul Skeens guy.
Jeff's a Clayton Kershaw guy. The GOAT right behind me. That gentleman right there. It gets to be Clayton Kershaw Day for as long as that man wants to continue to be a pitcher. And as of today, Anthony, he's a member of the Dodgers organization. He's pitching every once in a while. And you want to have 2 days? You can have 2 days. But Kershaw Day doesn't get retired till that man says so.
When a guy aside from Kershaw has a legitimate case at a Cy Young Award, it's going to be Happy that guy day too.
Come on. That's fine. Multiple days. I'm good with that. We can have multiple days a week. And it's every 6 days now. So the ratios might work out if you just have 2 days.
I have last question. I do have a last question. Jeff, do you hate Yamamoto more than you love Paul Skeens?
I love Young. I'm the one who picked him to finish highest in Cy Young voting. Let's record show that.
You did.
So there we go. We had him. Scott, great to hear you. Great to see you. Guys. Great to have you on. Anthony, a pleasure as always. I love the dialogue. I love the debate. Getting a third person in here, spicing it up a little bit. And look, it wasn't too negative. Nobody cried tonight. So we're all positive on that. One programming note. Tomorrow night, we are scheduled to have a show, but we're making a real-time decision here. We're not going to do a show tomorrow with no game. We're going to move our Thursday night show to Friday night because Yamamoto Skeens is happening, and that feels like something that we should be talking about. So I know there is also a Laker game on Friday night, right, Anthony? They don't play tomorrow, but Correct. They play Friday. So the Laker game will be earlier. Dodger game will be on late into the night. So Yamamoto Skeens on Friday night. We'll have a Dodger Heads live tomorrow, on Friday. No live show tomorrow night. Live show on Friday night instead. So stay tuned for that. That is Anthony Witrado. That is Scott Geirman. Folks, check out DodgerBlue.com for all the latest Dodger Blue 1958 on social media, as well as on YouTube. If you're new here on YouTube, subscribe, ring the notification bell. Or if you're a podcast person, Apple, Spotify, Google, check out the Dodger Heads podcast. We would greatly appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your night, everybody. As always, go Dodgers. And yes, still champs.